Biggest story of the week, and I have a few things I want to say about it. Russell Wilson and the Denver Broncos. Here's the timeline, as best I understand it, based upon everybody I've talked to over the course of the last 5 days, including talking yesterday to Wilson's agent, Mark Rogers, who went on the record to give his version of what happened on Halloween, October 31, 2 days after the Broncos beat the Chiefs, starting into their bye week. Rogers said he got a call from George Paton, the Broncos GM, and Rich Hurtado, whose title I believe is VP of Football Administration. And they had a proposal for Mark Rogers, and it was a cordial, friendly call. The proposal was that Russell Wilson's injury guarantee for 2025, $37 million, that is due to become fully guaranteed on March 18th, the 5th day of the 2024 league year. They want to move that. And here's the problem. Here's the underlying problem, because a lot of people have gotten this wrong. And I'm not saying, oh, you got it wrong. I just want to give you a place where you can get it right and understand exactly what goes on here. Contracts have rolling guarantees. Now, a lot of contracts, what happens is you have injury guarantees that vest in the year the money is to be paid. For example, I've got a 2024 injury guarantee from the contract I signed last year. It becomes fully guaranteed at some point in March of 2024. The better contracts vest injury guarantees into full guarantees more than a year in advance. It's one of the reasons why Ezekiel Elliott was with the Cowboys as long as he was. They paid him a lot more than they wanted to in 2022 because his salary was already fully guaranteed, because the injury guarantee for 2022 flipped to a full guarantee in 2021. That's what Wilson's contract does. Another $37 million guaranteed for injury in 2025 to be paid out next year becomes fully guaranteed March 18 of 2024. They wanted to move that. Here's why they wanted to move it. If Russell Wilson plays all the way through to the end of the season, and he's got any injury that keeps him from passing a physical on or before March 18, they're stuck. They don't have the flexibility to say, you know what? This isn't working out. You're doing a good job, but you're not doing a great job. You're not living up to the standard that this contract would suggest. So we're going to exercise our prerogative to terminate the contract, and you become a free agent. The trigger's in there early. See, people feel bad for Russell Wilson. He's walking away with $124 million, and he's going to be a free agent in the early days of free agency. There's no reason to feel bad for him, folks. Guys get far more mistreated than Russell Wilson is being mistreated by the Broncos, if he's even being mistreated at all. So that's what they wanted. They wanted to move that date so they could decide after this season whether or not they want to continue or whether they want to do something else. They didn't want to possibly have their hands tied by an injury that would make it a foregone conclusion that they were bound to him through 2025, at least financially. They don't have to keep him, just like they're going to cut him, most likely, with $39 million fully guaranteed for 2024. They didn't want to be in a position where they also had $37 million fully guaranteed for 2025. That's what they did. That's what they proposed. Now, Mark Rogers, who is primarily a baseball agent, and we know in baseball the contracts are guaranteed, I don't think he reacted well to this. I think he felt like the rug was pulled out from under him. Now, this is me talking, not him. I believe that he assumed when they did this contract, the $37 million to be paid in 2025 was, as a practical matter, fully guaranteed. That they weren't going to cut him before that money vests as fully guaranteed. So it kind of throws you for a loop. Hold on here. You know, we did this contract and we build in these future guarantees that vest because, you know, you're worried about the funding rule and you don't want to put all this money in escrow. That's the game that the owners play to try to have these devices that, on one hand, you look at as a way to avoid the funding rule because it's not fully guaranteed at signing. On the other hand, it does provide an avenue for a team to say, we're going to rip this thing up before this contract has its injury guarantees for 2025 fully vest. Now, here's an important point. Same thing happened to Derek Carr last year. And nobody shed a tear for Derek Carr. Nobody said boo. I mean, think about it. Derek Carr signs a much hyped $40 million per year contract with the Raiders in 2022, before the season. Extension. He was entering the final year of his contract, signs the extension with all that guaranteed money. And you know what happens? The agent puts it out to the reporters, and the reporters rush to Twitter and they overstate it. And it's a great deal. Everything's great. Everything's happy. Everybody's fine. And then we get to week 17, and what happens? He gets benched. Why did he get benched? He had a $40 million injury guarantee that was going to become fully guaranteed right after the Super Bowl. They did the same thing to him that the Broncos ultimately did to Russell Wilson. Now, I don't know whether or not there was any effort made earlier that year to say to Derek Carr's agent, we want you to move this date around or we're going to bench Derek Carr. See, I think the problem here is the Broncos were a little too overt in their messaging. The Broncos tried a little too hard to engineer an outcome, and that's what sparked this reaction. They got the union involved, threats of litigation or a grievance over alleged CBA violations. I still don't know what the CBA violation is, because I think a team is fully within its rights to say, you know what? We got a guy here who's got an injury guarantee that becomes fully guaranteed on March 18. And if he's injured and he can't pass a physical, we're not going to be able to tear this contract up. So we're exercising our prerogative to not play him. See, it's a twist to the Terrell Owens rule that the union jammed into the CBA, rightfully so, in 2006. It takes away the ability of a team to send a guy home with pay. You can't do that anymore. What the Buccaneers did to Keyshawn Johnson, what the Eagles did to Terrell Owens, after they suspended him 4 games for conduct detrimental to the team, they just said, go home and we'll pay you. You're not welcome here. You can't do that anymore. Where it gets very murky is what a team can or can't do by way of the 53-man roster. Who has the right to play? Who has the right to dress? Every week there's 6 or 7 guys who are on your team, but they're not in uniform. What rights do they have to say, I should be in uniform? What rights does a starter have to say, I should still start? I think the problem is, by being as overt and explicit as they were, the Broncos handed an argument to the union that this has nothing to do with football. If it's about football, there's nothing we can do about it. If it's about business, if you're using this as leverage to get him to adjust his contract, that's where you're violating the CBA. That's what I think would have happened if the Broncos had gone through with it. And that might be why they didn't go through with it. Either they were bluffing or they got scared by the threat of litigation. We get down to the end of the season, they couch it as a football decision. There's not going to be a grievance. There's not going to be a fight, but there will be a divorce between the Broncos and Russell Wilson. There's no coming back from this. All this acrimony, threats of grievances, stuff being leaked to the media yesterday when the Broncos were putting their version out there through NFL.com and NFL Network, their version. You can just tell it was their version that was being put out there. No surprise. They partially own NFL Network. But I think it's gotten to the point where it's just done. Now, one more thing about Carr. And this is another reason why Carr has more cause to be upset than Russell Wilson. There's 2 different ways and 2 different time periods that an injury guarantee can become fully guaranteed. You tie it to the start of the league year, like with Russell Wilson, 5th day of the league year. The 2025 injury guarantee becomes a full guarantee. Or you tie it to the start of the waiver period. That was Carr's situation. 2nd, 3rd day of the waiver period. Now, it was explained to me several years ago that basically the etiquette in the NFL is if the trigger is tied to the start of the league year, it's fair game for the team to rip up the contract if it chooses to do so. But if the trigger is tied to the waiver period, that is specifically to get around the funding rule. That the team doesn't want to have that full guarantee at signing, so we're going to push it just far enough so it's essentially a full guarantee. We're not going to pull the rug out from under you. We're not going to rip up the contract. I mean, think about this. The Raiders signed Carr in 2022. And that first big trigger after 2022 was early 23, tied to the waiver period. That was a breach of etiquette. I don't know if it was a breach of the CBA, but if anybody has reason to be pissed off about how they were treated in similar situations, it's definitely Derek Carr. Because when he signed that contract, there was no way he or his agent were thinking they're going to tear this up after 1 year. If it had been tied to the third day of the league year, okay, you know what? They have an out. Just like the Seahawks have with Geno Smith. Oh, he's got a 3-year contract. Well, you look at it, oh no, they have an out on the third, fourth, or fifth day of the league year. There's a roster bonus that's due, which will be the moment they either renew their vows or they move on. So it's a nuanced point, but I think it's an important point. Carr really did get screwed by the Raiders and by Josh McDaniels or Dave Ziegler or Mark Davis, whoever made that decision. He really did get screwed. And we never heard any of that. There was no blowback. There was no PR campaign from Derek Carr. Right or wrong, I'm not passing judgment. I'm just stating facts. They could have made a stink about it, and they didn't. This Wilson thing, it became a stink. And the fact that it became a stink makes it even more likely that there will not be a continuation of the relationship between Russell Wilson and the Broncos.
Hi, it's Mike Florio. Thanks for watching PFT on YouTube. Hit subscribe for the latest news and analysis from Pro Football Talk.